Let's get to some of the big news this week, and I'm gonna lay it right out here. I laughed out loud when I heard Bill Belichick headed to North Carolina, possibly to be the head coach. Like, it just, C-Rob, it made me laugh. But I'll tell you, once I finished laughing hysterically, I kept thinking to myself, for him to even get to the spot that he's talking to North Carolina, to me, in my mind, he's got a whole team of people that are reaching out to NFL teams. If he feels like there's real interest in the NFL, there's no way he's going down the rabbit hole of this North Carolina thing, right? So what does this all mean for the future of Bill Belichick?
Right. Well, I mean, look, first and foremost, elements of most ownership groups across the NFL have Bill Belichick's number. Like, he's imminently reachable. Other owners have counseled, like taken his counsel on their own head coaching hires. He's very much involved across the NFL, particularly now that he's outside of that Patriots job. So he is a resource that's tapped. So let's be clear here. It's not even really necessarily reach out to Bill's people and let them know we're involved. You could just reach out to Bill and let them know you're involved. You could just, hey, we're going to be interested in you once this hiring cycle really starts to kick up. So when the North Carolina thing happened, when the news first came out, I was like, okay, this is just a sad leverage play. Like, clearly there's nothing rolling with other teams right now. There's not a hotbed of interest in Bill. He wants to get back into coaching the next rotation, which is really clear. And he's trying to basically apply some pressure. So here's a pressure point. And in my mind, North Carolina makes out. They're like, hey, it's great to have Bill Belichick attached to our coaching search. That does nothing but raise our Q rating in terms of a job. And for Bill Belichick, it lets NFL teams know, like, hey, okay, not going to sit around forever. Like, if we're going to do this thing, let's start to get the ball rolling. What I thought was interesting was when I reached out across the NFL to people that worked with Bill in New England, other ancillary figures who know Bill really well, across the board, nobody believed it. Everybody was like, no, he's just playing chess right now. Bill's not going to North Carolina. When that dynamic changed was when all of a sudden you heard Bill wants to take this job. He wants to bring in his son, Steve Belichick, and then set up the scenario where when he leaves the North Carolina job, his successor will be his son, Steve Belichick. I will tell you right now, that raised the eyebrows of everybody looking at this situation, because everyone's known for a long time, for years and years, that one of Bill's major goals was to set up Steve Belichick on very solid coaching footing. So that all of a sudden being connected to this situation, I think changed the seriousness in the minds of other individuals. Let's continue to discuss this. We'll circle back, though, to some of the things that have come out about the dance with North Carolina and how that might pertain to other NFL teams and how they look at Bill Belichick.
Real quick, I know this isn't a college show, but I don't know what North Carolina's getting out of all this. Like, North Carolina's not the best program in America, but they're certainly above the dog and pony show of let's bring in a 70-some-year-old man.
Frank, we're talking about him.
Son, like,
we're talking about North Carolina. That's what they're getting out of it, Frank.
But this might actually happen. But what if this happens and now you're stuck with Steve Belichick? Okay, like, again, North Carolina shouldn't be slumming like this. Like, this isn't some like off the radar Sunbelt team, right? Like, it should be above this. This is just
wait.
This is weird.
Frank,
like,
it's Bill Belichick. Okay, let's not act like this is a nobody. Come on.
I'm not saying that, but would you hire Bill Belichick to run your college team right now?
Yes, I would.
Why?
For one reason.
Come on.
It saves me money. Here's the thing. It saves me money in NIL, because if I can't compete with the massive dollars and cents that, oil money in Texas and huge programs in the SEC have. And I'm sitting there looking at it saying, my collective can't outspend your collective. So how do I get players on a discount? I get players to come play for me on a discount if they believe they're playing for somebody that can immediately get them into the league. And my sales pitch to every kid that I'm sitting there trying to get to come to the transfer portal, sales pitch to kids that I want to take less money is you're taking less, but you're playing for Bill Belichick. And Bill Belichick is going to lead you straight to the NFL. Now, do I believe that's the case? Maybe, maybe not. But to me, it's a great way. Hey, I can spend way too much on a coach and maybe spend less on the actual roster. If I can't compete spending the dollars and cents week in and week out that I'd have to spend to get a top-notch quarterback, then let me have somebody that I believe is going to get me 20, 30% off on every one of my collective contracts.
And honestly, I think it's an interesting theory. I don't know if it would actually prove out and be true.
Fair.
But it's an interesting theory. I think it's credible in terms of having that conversation and weighing it into the hiring equation. But I also think if you're North Carolina, you sit there and you go, well, we're moving into a new era now where, look, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, all these athletes could be unionized. We could have a collective bargaining agreement we're dealing with. We're hiring general managers for our football teams. We're basically becoming the sub-series of the NFL. It's Division I AA now. The NFL's Division 1A, we're Division I AA. What you would get in Bill Belichick is someone who can come in and professionalize your organization. Structure it the same way Nick Saban went into Alabama, and Alabama instantaneously became the 33rd team in the NFL. That's what happened. He professionalized the scouting department. He updated all the tools that were being used on the personnel side. He mobilized an army of free labor in terms of students who are crushing high school tape and then bringing some of these prospects to the attention of the coaching staff and then the recruiters. You would basically have a shake and bake startup in terms of moving your entire college program into the professionalization, the zone of professionalization. What I think is interesting in all this, and this is where I was alluding to before, because I think there's an NFL wrinkle here, is what's been reported is that Bill has handed over a manifesto of sorts to UNC saying, if I'm going to take this job, here's what I want. And supposedly it's biblical in terms of its size. What have we heard? 200 pages, 400 pages. I've heard a few different page counts, but there's a ton of stuff in there. And supposedly Bill's not movable on a number of these points. What I think is interesting about this is if you want to know why Bill is continuing to have problems when it comes to the NFL level, it's because there is still this persistent belief that whether he says it coming through the front door or not, once Bill gets inside your organization, he's going to want to have control or some element of control over what happens on your personnel side, which he did not succeed at in his latter years in a multitude of ways with the New England Patriots. And I'll just ask you, if you're the Atlanta Falcons right now, you revisit this last offseason when that was the best shot Bill Belichick had in that rotation to getting a job. It looked like it was going to happen. I think Bill Belichick thought it was going to happen. But you had people inside the Falcons organization who were like, I don't know if I buy this idea that he's just coming in to be the coach, and that there's not going to be a bunch of structural changes, and that people's job titles and their responsibilities aren't going to change significantly once Bill's in the organization. And those people ultimately won out. That's how he ended up not getting the Falcons job. Well, now with what's just transpired with UNC and this manifesto being slid across the table, the people inside the Falcons are going, yeah, okay, that's kind of what we thought. That's what we suspected we were really signing up for if we were to hire Bill Belichick. To me, this whole idea of a manifesto and UNC having this whole entire code that they're going to have to follow with him, I think that tracks with what some people across the NFL continue to think about him. He may say he doesn't want full control, he doesn't want to tinker and retool everything, but once he gets in the door, yeah, it's the zebra with the same stripes. They're not changing.
Yeah, and it's not just, when you sign up for Bill Belichick, it's not just the X's and O's. It is the whole shebang and stuff like, I'm bringing Steve Belichick with me.
Right,
And all the other names that are coming along with them that have been retread all over the NFL. Like, where's Josh McDaniels these days? Where's Joe Judge? Could we, you're not just signing up for the greatest coach in NFL history, perhaps. You're signing up for the whole thing, which failed miserably at the end with the Patriots. Getting back to North Carolina real quick, the one point I need to make here, yes, Saban is because he's boys with Saban and all this. Saban had the greatest recruiting run of all time in Alabama. Like the reason they won there wasn't because he came in and changed. That was part of it. I get it. But it was because he had 65-star kids on his roster at some point. Like that, Bill Belichick ain't doing that. He ain't sitting in some recruit's living room. I can't even imagine that. I also can't imagine college kids picking up his schemes. Like part of the reason Bill Belichick was great with the Patriots is because they needed smart players to run these schemes for Bill Belichick that were beyond and above everybody else in the NFL at that point. I don't think North Carolina kids at 20 years old, some sophomore safeties picking up all this, right? Like, I just don't see this working out for anybody. I don't think this helps Belichick's legacy. He'll be there for like a year or two tops. Maybe he's 72 years old. He's not going to be here 5 years. Like that, just by the time we get to like collective bargaining and college teams looking like NFL teams, Belichick's going to be on his boat. Like that, but I guess I do get he could set up an infrastructure where you're already set up for this transition. But I just don't see any way this turns out well for anybody. And maybe Bill just wants to go coach. Maybe he wants to get his son a job. But that's
I think
fine,
that is part
I guess.
Of it.
But
I do think that's part of it. I do think
he just wants to coach.
Yeah,
and that's
fine.
He wants to coach. And he's got the clout. If he wants to go, hey, I've never tried this before. Sure, that's cool. But I don't see it working out.
I mean, he could certainly have a succession plan day one where I'm coaching for X amount of time, Steven's going to take over, and then I'll walk into a front office position with North Carolina. I don't want to fault, I would say this. We all sit here and say, well, he wants to bring in his coach and his kids and all these things. At this point, if he wants to continue working, he's going to want to work with people he likes working with. No different than anybody. Like if suddenly somebody comes in and plucks C-Rob and says, all right, C-Rob, we're building a whole network around you and you get to work with any host you want. Well, the thought is that C-Rob's probably going to pick people he's worked with in the past because he's comfortable with that. Like if tomorrow I was asked to put together a touring band to go out on the road and play a bunch of music, I wouldn't necessarily want the best at every position. I'd want guys that I'm comfortable with that I know execute what I want. I think that's just part of what's natural for a coach at this level. So I think it makes sense for Belichick to want to do it his way. Part of this, though, we have to look at the Patriots, do we not? Like, the Patriots roster is terrible, and the Patriots are in a complete rebuild, and the Patriots suck. And part of the reason the Patriots suck is because Belichick didn't leave them in the best situation. I just think, like, the context around this is like, what are you getting? Are you getting Bill Belichick with Tom Brady 10 years ago? Or are you getting the Bill Belichick we saw in the last few years that had an abject disaster of a roster that he left behind? So I think the hard part about all of this is for North Carolina, it's a huge name. Is it a great football decision? I don't know.
Real quick, Charles, I need to ask you this question. Is Bill Belichick's chance of ever coaching in the NFL above 0%? Is it zero? Like there's no chance? Because going to North Carolina completely eliminates that. We all know he probably wants to pass Don Shula at some point, 9 wins away, I believe. But this just seems like he goes to North Carolina. You're talking, he's not a 50-year-old man who could come back at 55. We're talking about a 72-year-old man. You're not getting hired at 75 if he couldn't get hired at 71. It just seems like if he goes to North Carolina, that's it. But is it at zero right now of him coaching in the NFL?
I don't have any indication that's not at zero right now. I just don't.
Okay.
Like I don't when all this happened, I mean, you reach out to agents who manage not just head coaches, but they manage personnel people. They manage assistant coaches who would be on Bill's list, right? That's the one thing. If you want to know if like the level of interest in a candidate and you can't get it from the candidates themselves. So if I can't go to Bill and say, Bill, what level of interest are you getting? Or I can't go to Bill's agent and say, what level of interest is Bill getting? What you can do is you can go to coaches that you know are on his short list, because when he goes somewhere, he's got to build a staff. You don't wait to start putting those people on alert until the last possible minute. You give them a hint. And typically the agents of those coaches know, hey, Bill said, be ready, like be in the bullpen, because I could get this job and you're going to have this position. Do you want it? If you want it, cool, I'm writing you in. And so far, I have not heard a peep from anybody representing a number of assistant coaches, some people in personnel. No one's gotten the, hey, warm up, be in the bullpen, be ready. Haven't heard that, which to me is suggestive that there's no back channeling going on right now.
Yeah.
There's
it's kind of crazy
happening.
that the greatest coach of all time who is going to go coach in college can't even get a sniff from the NFL. Like, and everybody, he always comes up like, oh, the Cowboys should hire Bill Belichick, or the Bears should have Bill Belichick come in and change everything. But there's none. And he's, I mean, legitimately, like, if he's not the greatest coach of all time, he's one of the top 5. And it's wild that he's just done. Like, he was done with the Patriots, and then legitimately that's it. Like that, it's kind of crazy that he can't get his foot back in the door.
Let me
I get it though. I understand it.
Let me throw something else at you that's a little interesting about Belichick. For a number of years now, we've all sat there and looked at the Don Shula win total, and we said, well, he's close to surpassing the Don Shula win total. If you take regular season and postseason together, give him a couple years, he's going to be able to surpass that. What a monumental achievement. Something changed, though, in the last few years that I think lessens that pursuit. and that is Andy Reid and Patrick Mahomes. And the fact that when it's all said and done, if you really crush the numbers and you look at the extension Andy Reid just signed, and you look at the win totals in the regular season and the postseason with the Chiefs, Reid is taking that number. He's taking over Don Shula, and he's going to take over Bill Belichick if Bill Belichick surpasses Don Shula. When it's done and Andy's finished coaching, he's going to end up being the all-time winningest coach in NFL history. So does that take a little bit out of the pursuit for Bill Belichick? Are you sitting there going, well, geez, I just got to get an NFL job so I can get that record, and that will be, the stamp of approval on my entire pursuit. It means everything to me, only to be surpassed by Andy Reid, and probably in short order, honestly, if we're being real about it. I think that's an interesting wrinkle as well. I think it just comes down to, I'll focus this through Mike Vrabel, right? So when Mike Vrabel, when he was out at Tennessee, and then he didn't have a job that next year, he wasn't in the ever, I thought he's going to get a head job right away, immediately. It'll be the Andy Reid getting, leaving Philadelphia. He's going to have a job within, 5-6 days. Didn't happen. And I think it really severely bothered Mike Vrabel that he did not coach that following year, which is how he ends up going to the Cleveland Browns and being an advisor this year to their staff, because he wanted to be involved. And it's why I think Mike Vrabel absolutely is going to hit the ground running, trying to get a head job in this next cycle. I think Bill, it's the same situation, but I think there's age on top of it, right? He knows there's a limited amount of time to still do this job. And then I think deep down in his core, it's just what he's about, just like his father. It's like what his father was about, right? I think it's just in his DNA that I think he wants to be coaching, as much as he might enjoy being on television and, all these other things that are going on in his personal life, which now have become the fodder of TMZ and Instagram and talking about age gaps and all these other things in his personal life. And there seems to be a lot of stuff going on. I think he wants to be back in the grind of coaching. And if that means going to college, I don't know if, to me, it's Nick Nolte at the end of Blue Chips, where he's, the corniest ending ever, where he's walking by the park and all of a sudden,
do not speak bad about Blue Chips on this show.
Let's teach this kid how to shoot a jump shot.
Get out.
I just turned myself in and destroyed my career. But hey, here's this kid on the, this little kid. Let me start teaching him. I'm just a teacher at heart. That's what I am. I think that's what.
Blue Chips is incredible, and I'm not going to let you badmouth Blue Chips on this show.
Sports movies in general all suck. All right, Blue Chips.
I need to tell you. You said to me, I just want to get this in. Have you guys both seen Succession?
Yes, of course. Yeah.
Okay, you've seen Succession. Okay. You said, hey, if C-Rob went and took another job, he'd want to be surrounded by the people that he'd want to bring along. I just want you to know, it would be like a Tom Wamsgans, Greg Hirsch situation. I'd go get Frank. So I'd be like, I got my guy who I can beat on in this next job. It's like that in the Succession where he basically tells Greg, hey, you're good, man. You're good. And he's good because he just wants that guy to literally smack on. I would bring you with me, Frank.
I love you, Charles.
Frank will always be our Greg. All right. We'll get into Vrabel a little bit. You just mentioned him, but there's one team leaning towards him that kind of surprised me. I'll tell you about it in a second. C-Rob, quarterback room is up. By the way, you guys should check that out. It's great work from Charles every single week. But you were mentioning Mike Vrabel earlier, and I'm going to be honest, you have sort of blown my mind. The Bears likely leaning towards Vrabel, according to you. Give everybody the why on this, because it sort of opened my eyes.
Yeah, so I've been spending a lot of time making calls on, what are the Bears thinking? Where is this coming from? Because, there's some messy elements of the Bears right now. Kevin Warren, the team president, Ryan Poles, the general manager. Are these guys really on the same page anymore? You got to remember that Ryan Poles used to report directly to ownership there. Kevin Warren comes in, and now Ryan Poles reports to Kevin Warren. And, so the upper reaches of the management are kind of funky. We saw, obviously, what happened with Eberflus. There's all these questions about culture with the Bears. Why the hell can't the Bears just get a freaking culture right? Please, God, how do we build this culture? And I think there's an undertone of that in the organization. When I talk to people who are clearly dialed into what's going on, who the candidates are going to be that are going to get called, the Bears are definitely weighing this idea of, sure, we could go out and get the hotshot first-time head coach. Maybe that's like a Joe Brady. Maybe that's a Ben Johnson. Bobby Slowick at one time might have been on that list. Drew Petzing in Arizona. Just one of these offensive whiz kids to come in and work with Caleb Williams. Or, from what I've been told, there's definitely an appreciation inside the organization for what Dan Campbell has done in Detroit, being that super culture guy, leader, stands up, gives the speeches, rallies everybody, but then also has the whiz kid offensive coordinator, the brilliant strategist that he works alongside. Sort of the same situation when you look at Jim Harbaugh and Jesse Minter with the Los Angeles Chargers, Dan Quinn and Cliff Kingsbury in Washington. I think there is a deep appreciation inside the Bears for those dynamics. Now, with that in mind, the two names I have heard that I will be stunned if they don't come up on the Bears list of candidates to interview: Mike Vrabel, obviously ex-Tennessee Titans coach, now in an advisory role with the Cleveland Browns defense, and Brian Flores from the Minnesota Vikings, who obviously is the defensive coordinator there, previously was the Miami Dolphins head coach. Both super strong leaders, strong voices, big presence in the room, guys, right? So as I start to dig into this, I think what was really interesting, I'm talking to someone who's definitely really understanding how the Bears are starting to look at this. And I said, yeah, help me dig into this. Let's sort out Mike Vrabel versus Brian Flores. Like, tell me what separates this two. And it was great. He said, look, if you're bringing in the strong leader, that strong leader's got to have the ability to hire a really good offensive coordinator, right? And retain a really good offensive coordinator. I'm like, yeah, if you're going by the Dan Quinn, Dan Campbell, Jim Harbaugh kind of model, that's absolutely what you're trying to accomplish. And he said, okay, we'll look at Brian Flores and his history with offensive coordinators, 4 in 3 years with the Miami Dolphins, and it was a total show. And then look at Mike Vrabel with the Tennessee Titans, 4 in 6 years, but the only reason he had 4 in 6 years is because he hired Matt LaFleur, who, hey, turned out to be a pretty good coach, right? Turned out to be a pretty damn good hire by the Green Bay Packers. And then when he got hired by the Packers, they replaced him with who? Arthur Smith, who turned out to be a pretty damn good offensive coordinator. Not a great hire in Atlanta, but is faring pretty well in Pittsburgh right now as an OC. Good offensive mind, right? If you're going to look at Caleb Williams and you're going to focus this through Caleb Williams, you now have to consider who can hire the better offensive coordinator. If we're going out and getting leader guy, you give those big speeches, who is he going to then bring in and put Caleb Williams in that person's hand? And then one last little wrinkle I'll give you. I think if Thomas Brown is effective through the rest of this season as the interim coach of the Bears, I think he gets an interview for that job. And then I think ultimately there is a side conversation that, hey, look, if he's not going to be the head coach, would the next coach in be willing to bring in or retain Thomas as the OC and give Caleb Williams an element of continuity? So a lot of moving parts with the Bears. I think it's really interesting. But one thing everybody should keep in mind when you're hiring that leader coach, what is their history when it comes to offensive coordinators, particularly if you're really worried about who are they going to hire to guide your quarterback?
And I think one thing with Flo, too, is that's going to hang over him for a while is Tua kind of airing him out. I mean, the fact is he had a young quarterback, a really, really, really good young quarterback in Tua, who's become one of the better ones in the NFL. And Tua's out there saying, yeah, this guy said I sucked every day and I was never going to develop under him and all this kind of stuff. When you're hiring a coach and you have Caleb Williams, you're like, well, he didn't really work that well with Tua before. Like, Brady was coming up all the time. Like, we need the right guy for Caleb. I think Vrabel's a great coach. I think he got more out of those Titans teams than they deserved. Like, he was always, except for right there at the end, he was always above basically like what the roster should be. Like, they had a 1 seed one year and they weren't anywhere close to that. But I think a lot of that
massive injuries that year. The year they had that 1 seed, the injuries were a joke.
Job. I think Vrabel is a heck of a coach. My only problem with this whole model, like you talked about, yes, can Vrabel go hire an offensive coordinator? He's proven he can. But at some point, when Matt LaFleur leaves the Titans, are you always going to hire Arthur Smith to replace him? You're constantly having to get the offensive coordinator. Whereas if you do hit on Ben Johnson, let's say, because he's the hot name. If Ben Johnson is the dude, right, and he's as good as we think offensively, he becomes a head coach and does great there, he's Caleb's guy for the next 10, 12 years. Whereas if Caleb Williams does well, you're just replacing offensive coordinators all the time, which doesn't help his continuity. And eventually you're gonna roll a 7, right? Like, and not hire the right offensive coordinator for that job. So that's my only problem with hiring Flo or hiring Vrabel is their defensive guys. They need that offensive coordinator work with Caleb. And if that offensive coordinator does really well, he's gone in the next cycle, and you're just having this cycle all the time. But I do get what you mean, and I think Vrabel's a heck of a coach.
I mean, my counter to that is being an offensive coordinator is so different than being a head coach. You hire Ben Johnson to come over and be your head coach. We have no idea how he'll actually be.
I get that.
So there is some, are you limiting the effectiveness? I see, Rob, there's one part of the Vrabel portion of this that I just want to at least throw out as a pushback to the Bears. And the only thing to me is that if you look at Vrabel's past, we all saw the footage of John Robinson in the draft room we saw that. And Mike Vrabel and Rand Carthon, the current GM of the Titans, never tried to hide their disdain for each other. But I would want to think that wherever Vrabel goes, he's got to believe that the GM in place is aligned, and then he's got to believe that the GM is going to be there for a minute. Because like that revolving door GM, when you've already got trust issues there, that's the part of the Bears that I have a little bit of a trust issue. Like, I'm looking at the Bears saying, if I'm targeting Mike Vrabel and that's real, then I need to go to Mike Vrabel same way San Francisco went to Shanahan and said, hey, Shanahan, who's your GM going to be? And he picked John Lynch, and they came in together. I'd almost have to do that with Vrabel from day one, because I don't believe he'd want to work somewhere with somebody he doesn't trust.
That is absolutely true. I'm with you 100% on that. Like, the alignment between he and the general manager is fundamental. And I would say if there is a problem in Chicago right now between general manager Ryan Poles and team president Kevin Warren, who obviously we're talking about a guy who was a Big Ten commissioner. He was in the Minnesota Vikings organization for a long time. He was around the Detroit Lions when I covered the Detroit Lions. And what I always heard about Kevin Warren, and I think I've heard consistently throughout his career, he is the guy who, when he goes in, he makes sure that he gathers up as much power as he can. And he tries to hold that power, and he tries to wield that power. And I wonder if that's what's happening right now with the Chicago Bears. Because, look, we have to remember when the Eberflus firing happened, it's Kevin Warren sitting up there next to Ryan Poles, and he's telling the audience, this is where the Bears are going moving forward. This is how great this job is. And no, we're not going to worry about firing Ryan Poles. And meanwhile, Ryan Poles is sitting there like, okay, like, all right, cool. Like, this guy's straight up, like, I mean, he might as well be the GM at that point, right? So yeah, that dynamic is a little scary. And I think that doesn't preclude the Bears from pursuing Mike Vrabel. But as you said, what's also interesting is I don't know how that dynamic in the Bears front office and then with Kevin Warren is going to play out, because I think you have to wonder, if you're Kevin Warren and you're sitting there and you're saying, I want to be at the forefront of this organization. I want to be the power center of this organization. I don't know if I want a coach who's going to come in and not be okay with me being the lead person over the general manager, over the head coach, the person that you have to operate through rather than operating directly with ownership. So yeah, there's some mechanics inside that organization, the upper reaches, where I could see, just like Bill Belichick in Atlanta, people going, let's go ahead and steer away from, let's try to keep Vrabel as far off the burners as we can, because some things could change once he gets in the door, and he could want to have a direct conduit to ownership. And maybe I don't like that as a team president. It'll be interesting to see if that's how it ultimately shakes out for the Bears. But I can tell you, there is clearly a very, very important priority in what this next coach can ultimately do for your culture. And everybody loves Ben Johnson, what he's doing with the Lions. I get it. Ben Johnson, in some ways, the way he presents publicly reminds me of Adam Gase. He's just a little, and I don't want to, and by the way, Gase was pretty good as an OC. There was a period in time, including with the Bears for a year, where he did a very, very good job as an OC. He presented different as a head coach. And I wonder if maybe that's a little bit of nervousness when it comes to Ben Johnson, because he's not like a Harbaugh. He's not like a either of the Harbaugh brothers. He's not like a Tomlin or a Vrabel or any of these guys, at least not right
Campbell,
now. Yeah. What you would hope is maybe he's Mike McDaniel, right? Who Mike McDaniel, I remember
kind
Mike
of a
McDaniel.
Quirky leader. That
quirky but cool. Like there is a relatability to quirky but cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But Mike was the guy where when I remember him being brought up for head coaching jobs, I was like, really? I'm like, because man, he's really funny and like he's very like engaging, but I just don't see him being like, does that really translate, to a head coaching job? And it has.
It has.
I don't know that Ben Johnson's necessarily considered cool, by the way. I'm sorry.
Neither are you, Charles.
I know I'm not. That's fine. But I'm also not up for any head coaching jobs, thank God.
I will just say, to your point of, guys that are culture setters, whatever, that's what Antonio Pierce was supposed to be for the Raiders. And I think when you look back at Antonio Pierce's greatest failing with the Raiders, it's not the product on the field. It's that he hired Luke Getsy. So to your point, having the right offensive coordinator, I still think, for any rah-rah guy, if you're going to be a rah-rah guy that sets the culture, you better be really good at hiring all of the people around you. If you are not, you end up, on a losing streak that loses your job. All right. Speaking of coaches and culture, let's get into the Eagles a little bit here, because big news this week is A.J. Brown. We all saw the comments after the game. He was asked what the offense needs to improve on. He just said passing. And for some reason, shockingly, veteran player Brandon Graham in the locker room sort of doubles down on his podcast radio appearance and, is pretty open about the fact that there's an issue between them. Like, I'm looking at all of this, Frank, and I'm saying, like, what is Nick Sirianni supposed to do? Like, you got veterans talking out on this for a team that right now is at 11-2. Like, so much for all that matters is winning. It feels like things are just ready to implode in Philly.
This is so Philly. This is so Philly.
Swear to God.
Where it's like,
Swear to God.
It's like you've won 9 in a row, and we need to come up with something.
You're 11-2.
11-2. You're maybe the best team in football. We'll see when they play the Lions, right? And there just has to be some kind of drama going on. So let's go talk to A.J. Brown, who's not getting the ball enough, because you're just not passing it that much, because you're winning anyway. Who cares, about stats and stuff at that point? And A.J.'s probably going to say something because he's an alpha receiver, and he does. And then that just leads to a week long of headlines in Philly about, the passing game is screwed up, and let's ask everybody about that now. And this team is unbelievable. They're very, very good. They could easily win a Super Bowl, but you get to this point in the season where, and I'm just going to talk about this as like a beat reporter, where you need something to write about, right? Like, you need something, especially in Philly. And just writing like the Eagles are good again, doesn't do, they needed something, and A.J. Brown gave them the gas, and now the fire is going all week. It's ridiculous. It's a ridiculous story.
As an ex-beat reporter as well, totally understand that, but it's not often that players give it to you in the midst of a winning streak.
That's true too.
In the midst of and then, by the way, if you would sat there and said, okay, well, who's the veteran? Who's the grown up? Who's going to put this out? Who cuts off the oxygen and extinguishes it? I'd be like Brandon Graham. And instead he's the meme. He's the meme of the girl turning back and looking as the house is burning down in front of her. Like, that's what he became in this whole scenario. Like, what the hell, man? That's great. And by the way, for people who are listening, do not pay attention to when the janitorial crew shows up after everything's been completely busted, destroyed, the toilet overflowed. Oh my God, it's a disaster. Don't pay attention to the janitorial crew, which is Nick Sirianni downplaying it, which is Brandon Graham trying to walk back comments, which is the initial comments are usually probably pretty close to what's actually happening here. But let me throw a couple of things at you that's really interesting about this, and that makes it so Philly to me. Jalen Hurts, so everything changed in the bye for the Eagles, right? Jalen Hurts had turned the ball over 7 times first 4 games. They go 2-2. They're like,
without A.J. Brown on the field
without A.J. Brown on the field. But they're like,
right.
But they're like, oh, like, what are we doing here? We got to figure this out. We have to figure out how to augment the scheme right now to protect Jalen as long as we need to protect him, and, let him get back into a rhythm, whatever. So since the bye, when they clearly changed what they were doing fundamentally, Jalen Hurts has gone from, I think he was averaging like 31 pass attempts or 32. It might even been 30. I think it was 33 pass attempts a game in the first 4 games. Since then, just over 21. So you peeled off 12 pass attempts. That's 12 targets that have to come out of somebody else's pocket. Meanwhile, they dialed up more Saquon. They dialed up more of Jalen Hurts being involved in the running game in certain respects. And someone had to sacrifice. So ultimately, what ends up being the sacrifice? Historically, A.J. Brown, who I think in the first 2 years there with Jalen Hurts was averaging 8.9 targets a game. Now he's down to like 6.2, right? So that's part of what he's given up. But it's working. The point is it's working. You adjusted to what was a problem. You became a stronger running team. And for the analysts out here who I've heard who are like, oh, that's bull. You can run and pass too. Everybody can eat. What about Detroit? Everybody in Detroit's eating. They're running and passing. What about Baltimore? Everybody's eating in Baltimore. They're running and passing. Here's the difference. Philly's defense, since the bye, is giving up, I think, like an average of a little over 15 points a game.
Oh, they've been unbelievable, yeah.
They've been great. Detroit, you're boat racing. That defense is beat to hell, and they're boat racing every single game. Everybody has to eat because Detroit needs to score a ton of points. Same with Baltimore's secondary, right? Baltimore's got defensive problems where you're going to get into some boat races. Philly's defense on a different level. You don't have to boat race. You can run the football. You can protect Hurts. You can win a ton of games and be one of the best teams in the NFC. And all it requires is for Devontae Smith and A.J. Brown to go, hey, would we love to be out here having our 1,400, 1,300-yard seasons? Absolutely. Are we doing it a little bit differently this year? Yeah, we are. And guess what? Probably down the stretch, when we get into the playoffs and a team says, okay, for this game, we're going to go ahead. We're going to stop Saquon. It's just how it's going to be.
Yeah, I was going to ask you this. The question is, can they turn it on if they need it? Because let's say the Lions put up 35 points on them,
sure.
Which they certainly couldn't in NFC Champ. Do you? Because I do. I think they can turn it on when they need to in a passing game. I trust Jalen Hurts. I do. Like, I think that passing game is going to be fine.
Are you telling me Jalen Hurts wasn't successful with A.J. Brown prior to this?
He
sure as hell was.
It's just the formula right now. And a lot of game script stuff, too. When you go from 31 to 21 or whatever it is, a lot of that is just, we're up by 20 points. Let's just keep handing the ball off. We're not going to get fancy here. Like, a lot of that's game script. So I think when they need to pass the ball, they're going to be fine.
A snap count matters. The number of drives matter to this whole context of how many possessions are. But guys, this is so simple to me. The double standard with which we talk about different positions. Like, I know we just get to say A.J. Brown is just a high-strung wide receiver. We see those all the time. Imagine if an 11-2 Jalen Hurts was asked, hey, what could be better on this team? And he's like, well, they could call more passes for me. I should be throwing the ball more. We would be losing our minds if Jalen Hurts had come out and been like, I need the ball in my hands more. I mean, I did get paid. Sure. I am a superstar quarterback. But we sit here and we're like, it's just a wide receiver. No, a distraction is a distraction. I don't care about what position you play. You're winning games. Like, sit down, shut up, color in your book at this point. You're winning football games. And everybody knows how great you are. You got paid. You got all the money you're going to get for right now. So it's not about needing to justify future contracts. Like, at this point, just go enjoy the fact that you're winning football games. And I want all of us to hold A.J. Brown to the same standard that we would hold Jalen Hurts to. And if we're going to sit here and say we wouldn't crush him, that's just a lie.
You know what's going to happen on Sunday, Fitz? I'm going to predict it right now. A.J. Brown's going to have like 8 catches for 145 yards in a touchdown.
Oh, man, definitely take
this is such a squeaky
over on his catches.
Yeah, this is such a squeaky
over on
game.
I will do you one better. I will bet you the first pass thrown in his direction.
Oh, maybe the first 3. Yeah, this is going to be one of those, okay, all right, AJ, here you go. We know what's going to happen. And it's fine. It's all fine.
Frank,
it's such an interesting dynamic.
Then does Saquon get to come out after the game and say, well, man, I should really get more touches?
Awesome.
I'm about to set a rushing record.
Somebody will ask. Yeah. I'm sure someone will ask.
I'm on pace for the Dickerson record. Yeah, absolutely. But there's one problem here, though, that I think we should at least address. It's slightly concerning to me that everything always seems to lead back to Jalen Hurts supposedly being the problem, right? Like the implosion last year, it was, well, Jesus, Jalen can't throw in the middle of the field. Oh my God, Jalen and Nick Sirianni, there's this fundamental problem that's broken between these two guys. Then this year it's, oh my God, Jalen's turned the ball over. Now we got to change the entire offense for his limitations. Then it became, oh my God, Jalen's stealing touchdowns from Saquon. He would be the MVP if he wasn't stealing all these touchdowns. He's a touchdown thief. Now it's, oh man, Jalen, they're just not throwing the ball. I called it I think I called it an exitless maze of quarterback cannibalism. Like they are gonna cannibalize this guy no matter what it takes, no matter how many games they win. Eventually we're gonna get to game manager. He's just a game manager. Anybody could step in and do the stuff he can do. Like eventually this, God forbid, he gets a really good backup It's crazy to me.
It is crazy. This whole story is crazy to me.
Yeah, I'm gonna laugh if they end up going to the Super Bowl, because it'll be a wonderful week leading up to it, asking everybody about Jalen Hurts being the crux of this problem, and does he need to win this Super Bowl to prove he's a worthy quarterback?
The funny thing is, C-Rob, I think if we're talking about the different tone of conversation, if we're honest for a second, when a quarterback is super likable, when a quarterback is just the sort of guy you want pitching Doritos to you, and like the sort of guy that you just think that you'd walk into a bar and have a drink with, all of a sudden we just cover that quarterback with so much more benefit of the doubt. Like we really do. Like Jalen Hurts is just not a dynamic personality, and as such, in the minds of some, he's just sort of labeled as not particularly likable because he's not that guy that comes out and is just he's not Peyton Manning, he's not gonna host SNL, right? And at some point I don't really care about any of that. I care about can my quarterback win me a bunch of football games, and by God, Jalen Hurts sure wins a bunch of football games. But you're right, like C-Rob, to your core, you are right about this. Like because he doesn't have that aw shucks likability of being a product placement. I can sell anybody anything. I do think that he's covered a little bit differently.
I don't know. It's just crazy. I mean, you go back to college, loses his job to Tua, right? Has to transfer out of Alabama to go and finish his career. I don't know what it is about Hurts and his path as a quarterback that has led to so much. I guess I'd look back at like early era Lamar. We loved Lamar, but then what happens? We start nitpicking like, oh, come on, is he really a passer? Like, is he ever going to break through? And what did it take? It just took time. Lamar eventually, and even now, I swear to God, even now, like I still eventually you let the Ravens are in not the greatest patch, obviously, since the start. And you still hear, yeah, I don't know. He's still got passing limitations. I'm like, oh my God, you got to be kidding me.
He's going to be like a 3-time MVP. Oh, whatever. He still stinks as a passer. Jalen Hurts is Dak Prescott. That's what it is. Like Dak Prescott was second in the MVP voting last year, right? And the moment Dak Prescott struggles at all, it's, oh my God, Dak stinks. Get rid of him. That's just the markets. I think playing quarterback in that market, you need to be Brady, Manning, Mahomes, whatever. You need to be just about perfect because they will just pick you apart at every turn. The fan base will do it. It's just the way those two teams are. New York teams too, same way.
I also think though, Frank, we cover the middle third of the NFL in quarterbacks. We cover quarterback, whatever your ranking is. Off the top of my head, I'm not sitting here making a ranking, but we cover quarterbacks ranked like the 8th best quarterback to the 15th, somewhere in that range. We cover them far differently. Right, because they're not quite good enough to be Mahomes, so it's not an easy conversation. But they're not bad enough to just say they suck. So then all they do is win a bunch of football games, many of them, and we're like, yeah, but that's not good enough until you suddenly don't have a Jalen Hurts, and then you're sitting there saying, by God, like there are a bunch of teams that would kill to have a Jalen Hurts.
It's called the Kirk Cousins zone.
100%.
Kirk's getting his
8 to 15.
Matthew Stafford. Look at what he's done this year. He's had some great games. He's had some awful games. If he played in Philly, they'd be killing Matthew Stafford. They'd be like, oh my God, go back to the Miami game. He's terrible. Let's get rid of it. Like, it's just markets. And yes, you're right. The middle class.
We're still killing Tua.
I don't get that. I'm never going to get that. I'm never going to understand that.
We're sitting here killing Tua, but we're not killing Herbert. We're not killing Trevor Lawrence yet. Like, it's crazy. Like, but once you are in that middle pack, boy, life hits you different. All right, we got power rankings to get to. There's some controversy and question on where we're supposed to rank the Chiefs. We'll figure it out after we take a quick break. C-Rob, make me smart. All right, Frank and I are over here being pretty. I need you to make us both smart.
I always get the toughest assignment.
No, that's fair. Like, what is because I keep getting asked. I was hanging out doing a interview this morning, and somebody said, who should we be most scared of in the NFL playoffs right now? And they listed all these teams, and I'm like, they didn't even list the Chiefs. And I'm sitting there, I'm saying, did I miss something? Like, I'm convinced at this point that in the Super Bowl, Patrick Mahomes is going to throw a Hail Mary, which is going to be caught by a hawk. Jesus is going to take that hawk over the goal line and then deliver that football to whoever, and they're going to win. Like, I don't know. Frank's got him at number 3 in the power rankings, and I don't know what to do with the team that my mind tells me may not be Super Bowl caliber. My entire core tells me that they're just not that good, but all they do is win every stinking week. Like, what is the appropriate way to look at the Kansas City Chiefs right now?
That even when they are, for them, at their most mediocre of greatness, that's what it is. They're in a mediocre zone of greatness. Like we've seen them at the peak of greatness, which was Mahomes' first couple of seasons, scoring a zillion points. Tyreek Hill could rip off, a big play at any given second. There's weapons all over the field. It was all the possibilities were there. We thought that's it. I remember sitting there, like Frank and I used to have these conversations about Patrick Mahomes is Michael Jordan. Like he's Tiger Woods. This is what this is going to be like forever. He's going to be playing at this level forever. And then reality sets in. Roster attrition. Some guys don't live up to their billing. You trade away Tyreek Hill because you don't want to deal with that contract. Travis Kelce starts to get old. Hollywood
Brown gets hurt. Rasheed Rice gets hurt.
Hollywood Brown, Travis Kelce starts spending the offseason enjoying himself with his social crowd, which is, hey, no, I'm not salty about that at all. Congratulations. Good for you. But then you show up at training camp and you're not in the best shape, right? You got to work yourself into shape over the course of the season. So to me, I think basically what we're going through is not only this season, but also last season, we've continually dealt with this whole vantage of the Chiefs offense going, it's not as good as it used to be. Last season,
the defense isn't as good this year. The defense
but they keep winning. No, I get it. I understand that. I'm not arguing. Like to me, I just think that's why people are staring at the Chiefs and going, they're just catching a lot of green lights right now, which, by the way, is not wrong. They are.
By the way, I did look the math on this. The math on this, and this was in Power Rankings, that even if you give the Chiefs a 20% edge over a random opponent in a close game, which I think is, okay, they get an edge because of Mahomes and Reed, right? You're 60-40 to win every close game. To do it 15 times in a row, you know what the percent is? 0.047%. It's 1 in about 2,100 that you would win 15 in a row close games. This is absolutely unbelievable the role they're on. And so I just simply, where would you rank the Chiefs? You have to rank football teams every Monday like I do. Would you rank the Chiefs ahead of the Bills right now? Would you rank them ahead of some of the Vikings? Because right now the only two teams I have ahead of them are the Lions and Eagles, but I don't think they're the third best team in football right now. I just don't. The record is what it is, but I don't think they're the third best team in football.
Let's get super reductive about it. Okay, let's just get as reductive as possible. We'll take it back to the AFC title game, right? We'll say AFC title game, Super Bowl. I'll give you that 2-game window. I have Reed and Mahomes. Give me your coach and quarterback combination that you would rank ahead of Reed and Mahomes.
I know the answer is nobody. I mean, even I can sit here and be like, well, Josh Allen is the MVP this year. I take it, but I get it.
You got to take Sean McDermott.
The team, this is the team that of every single 12-1 team in NFL history, they have the worst point differential by 30 something. It's not just the worst; it's the worst by miles. We have never seen a team. I can say this: we have never seen a team like this that is 12-1 and only beating teams by a few points every game. I think they're plus 58 and they're 12-1. That's unbelievable. They've caught so many breaks too.
Rodgers last season in Green Bay. I think if you go back, I remember Rodgers' last great season in Green Bay where they ended up losing the NFC title. They lost the NFC title game to San Francisco. And then the next year it started the big struggles. And then we went back and looked at the year before and we were like, man, they won a lot of really close games. They had a great record, but geez, there were a lot of close games.
But does this not apply to the Chiefs? Does this not? No, next year we're going to come in and say, well, the Chiefs are going to go 15-2 again, and they're going to win every close game.
The problem is, to beat the Chiefs, you got to be flawless. So to see Rob's point of coaching quarterback that you trust. All right, maybe I trust Josh Allen, but do I trust a play call of a quarterback sneak as time is expiring? I don't trust Sean McDermott to make the right decision in every single situation, right? We have no. Right. Do I trust Dan Campbell to be aggressive at the right times, but not too aggressive because you make that mistake? Right. I don't know.
Don't trust Todd Bowles to go for 2 when you needed to go for 2. You don't trust the Raiders rookie center to make the right snap when they're already in field goal range to beat them. You don't trust Isaiah Likely to get both toes in bounds. You don't trust a Bengals safety to not take a defensive pass interference on 4th and 16. You don't trust that your kicker, your third kicker of the year is going to doink one in when you need to win. Every break this is not just coaching a quarterback. This is so many breaks they've caught.
But admit this though, part of this is how often do people say, well, when you're taking on a team like the Chiefs, You got to be aggressive. We hear that all the time. Every broadcast, they're like, it's fourth and short. You got to go for the points here. You got to get the touchdown. Because I think there is the mentality of like, we know we're screwed when the game ends. So we're going to have to be more aggressive in absolutely everything we do for the entire course of the game. That does change the approach to the football game. So now these boneheaded decisions aren't part boneheaded, but it's in part because I think everybody in the room, every single player on that sideline is like, damn, man, we're playing the Chiefs. So we're going to have to be more aggressive here.
I think there's some psychological advantage to all this too. This black magic stuff is
Frank.
It seriously has to get in everybody's head.
This is 50 Cent pulling up to the light in his Bentley, looking over at the opponent, laughing and driving off. That's what this is. Like the Chiefs are sitting there like, yeah,
that's a great pull. That's a great pull.
We're just doing it. Like, cool. All right, whatever. Like, we're going to just keep winning. Like, I'm going to keep winning.
We'd be killing any other team for having this season. When the Vikings did this 2 years ago, we were like, oh my goodness, the Vikings are such frauds. And then they were in the playoffs, losing Daniel Jones at home. But with this Chiefs team, it's just funny. It's just different than everything else because we're like, yeah, the Chiefs are going to get into the playoffs and beat everybody, win another Super Bowl. And we're going to, 10 years from now, we're going to be like, that Chiefs team that went 15-2 and won their third straight Super Bowl. Oh my goodness, they were dominant. They were better than the 89 Niners and whatnot. Like that's how this is going to go.
Boys, I'm telling you right now, we're all going to be in New Orleans at the Super Bowl. If the Chiefs are in the Super Bowl, we're going to some sort of magic shop and I'm getting a voodoo doll and we're just going to start, I'm going to start poking every AFC West, like whatever deal with the devil is, I am prepared to make.
They're 2 home wins. They're 2 home wins away from being back in the Super Bowl because nobody's catching up for 1 seed anymore. Like you're 2 back with 4 to go. It's over. Like that's
here's the crazy thing too, though. You have to consider what's true for the Chiefs, where this whole idea of like it's gonna catch up to you. It's gonna catch up at one point. You're gonna get a little too cute, or that little break isn't gonna happen, and you're gonna go sideways. What's true for the Chiefs is true for the Bills. It's true for the Ravens. It's true for everybody else they're going to face in the AFC. You think that's not true for the Detroit Lions in the NFC? You think it's not true for the Philadelphia Eagles who are trying, like actively trying to destroy themselves right now? Like that's the one edge that they have is, yeah, we're kind of playing with fire right now, but so is everybody else. In some respect, we can find every other team in the NFL is playing with some element of fire.
All right, the Thursday night football, Rams at 49ers. 49ers favored by 2.5. C-Rob, you get to pick for Jory this week. Jory has gotten 9 of these. Frank 11. Stone and I both 4. It should be noted that Stone has only been picking for a few weeks, so I'm squarely in last place. Nobody got it last week. Jory took the Packers money line. Everyone else picked the Lions -3.5. So we got -2.5. San Francisco favored over the Rams. Frank, you're the resident leader here. Who you got?
49ers. I just think that the Rams coming off a very emotionally spending game against the Bills. They go on the road and face the 49ers, who looked like the 49ers last week all of a sudden. They look good. The running back situation does bother me a little bit. It's going to be Patrick Taylor. That's not great by any means. If Garendo doesn't, have some miracle cure by Thursday. So, but I still think the 49ers looked so good last week. They're still in the playoff hunt. Mathematically. So I think you get the best out of the 49ers this week. At home, I think they beat the Rams. Although McVay does have this like hold over Shanahan, where he's done well against them. So it's hard to discount that. But I just am so impressed with what I saw out of the 49ers last week that I'm going to go with them.
See, Rob, you're shaking your head. You're
I'm going Niners. I mean, it's definitely an element of spitting into the wind with McVay and Shanahan. I mean, McVay, it's real. He really does own Shanahan, but I'm with Frank. Like when I watched the Niners, they looked like they had some familiar juice that has kind of been lacking there. I think maybe there's a little bit of desperation that's setting in a good way and I think George Kittle talked about this, like, just being like a desperate team. Like this is how you're rolling out onto the field. And, with the Rams, great win, like great game. Puka Nacua looks unbelievable. I think it's more of a sugar high response for the Rams coming out of that game. I just like the 49ers at home and looking a little bit like Frank said, as like their old selves.
Stone has also taken the 49ers. I'll take the Rams. I don't like spitting into the wind. And, at this point, domination matters to me. So We keep sitting here saying the Rams could make a run if they get into the playoffs. Let's see it happen in this one. So I'll take the Rams on that. You can let us know how we do. Follow us on Twitter at Yahoo Schwab, at Charles Robinson, at Jason Fitz. You know that. We couldn't do this show without Stone. He does all the real hard work. He's the one that makes it sound and look pretty. We appreciate him. Friday, we're back with Jory. So we're doing a little swapperooski here. And that means that you can hang out with Jory with us on Friday. We'll get the latest, greatest from the owners' meetings and what it all means. In the meantime, rate, review, tell your friends, your family, tell your enemies, tell everybody to hang out with us. See, Rob, yes?
And keep an eye out for Frank, okay? Everybody make sure Frank shows up on Friday.
Have the Castle Rock PD. I'm going to be here like an hour beforehand just to make sure.
Have the Castle Rock PD on speed dial in case Frank doesn't show.
Yeah. The Castle Rock PD and hospitals all deserve free chocolates on Frank. I've just made that determination. Free chocolates from Lindt chocolates too, Frank. Not cheap chocolates. All right, send him nice chocolates for the Christmas work. We're just glad that Frank is with us so that we can rib him about the fact that he didn't die. Because for about 3 hours on Friday, I think we were all convinced that he'd partied himself to death. We appreciate you guys listening, and presuming that Frank doesn't have another bender, we'll be back with you on Friday. Thank you so much for hanging out with us.